Good morning. It's February the 5th, Wednesday, and this is the first YouTube video of this course, SOCI 6316. It's a directed study. There are 4 of us, counting myself, and we'll take a few first to welcome you.
A practitioner such as you and me, researcher, to sit down with others, the respondents, the co-researchers as we would call them from last semester, and explore from their standpoint, their hearts, what is the meaning of friendship, to get in the depth of the sense of friendship, as opposed to parsing it out through a series of questions, much like a biologist would dissect a frog. In this case, we'd be dissecting friendship. So they both the quantitative and the qualitative have valuable perspectives on any phenomenon. Historically, I think there was qualitative wasn't quite so emphasized until more recently, and then over the last, say, a generation ago when I was in graduate school, it was still then quantitative felt like they were elitists or something. You know, quantitative, we'd have our statisticians and count things, and it was difficult for the qualitative researcher to get a point of view across, even around a seminar table. I think, but over the course of time, over the last 10, 15, or 20 years, it's become recognized that qualitative studies can stand alone. You can do a qualitative study, explore the meaning of something, publish it, do some. We use qualitative studies or qualitative approaches to community health, going into neighborhoods to talk to people about or listen to what they have to say about what their community health the issues are in their neighborhood. So it's become recognized as a valuable perspective, a valuable way to solicit and elicit information from others. And quantitative, not quite, but increasingly so, is begun to be seen as maybe it should not stand alone, that there should be some sort of qualitative method in the background, some exploration of the meaning of the social phenomenon, getting inside the phenomenon with the co-researchers before attempting to dissect that phenomenon in some kind of quantitative way. Mainly because if I were to do that, let's say, I would dissect it from the standpoint, let's say, of Blanchard, how I would see friendship, and that may not be at all how others see friendship. So the idea of the qualitative is getting present in the minds and hearts of others and listening to what friendship is, and letting that conversation inform the development of any kind of design or of quantitative, particularly a survey instrument that might come out of that qualitative, that would make those questions in the survey instrument more valid. More likely would people who get those questions be able to understand what the researcher practitioner is asking. So it's become a balanced way of doing it, and it is, I'd have to say now, it's the prominent way of doing it in both in practice and social sciences as well as in research. So that's what this course is about. Well, in a way, it's what 6315 and 6316 are about, because they run tandem. Now, you might be wondering, moving on to a question that was posed out there, which one are we talking about in terms of the design that Creswell and his colleagues are talking about in the textbook? Well, I think the exploratory design is probably the best way to think about this. I think it's the last set of notes I think I published last week or put out on the web Blackboard. The only reason I say that, I'm not saying that you cannot do one of the others. In any case, whichever one you choose, the one I'm suggesting or one of the others, you've got to provide a rationale in your proposal, why you selected that, how that particular design fits best with your qualitative, the evolution or the recasting of the quantitative from your qualitative information that you gathered during 6315. So it doesn't matter which one you pick, you're just going to have a good rationale, even if you take the one that I'm suggesting. To me, exploratory seems to make the best sense from my perspective, and the notes are there, and I think I've even put some stuff out in discussion, mainly because qualitative comes first, and then we do 6315, and then we do 6316. There's a logic to that sequence of those two courses. Qualitative is exploring the phenomenon, getting in depth of what it is, speaking to a few people at length, co-researchers, to get a full understanding of what that is, using an interview guide to kind of facilitate the conversation, writing that report up, taking a look at it, and then say now in 6316, taking a look at the notes, the interview guide, the notes, the proposal, the qualitative paper that you did for 6315, let's say, and thinking, how can I recast this into a quantitative study? How can I take the questionnaire, the interview guide that I used in my qualitative, and there's some good ones there that you've done, how can I use that interview guide and the findings that I got from that and recast that into a survey of so many questions? We'll talk about that later in the semester. In fact, we want to do that during February. Sort of ought to be practicing it right now, laying out how you would write this, those survey questions. And now this 6315, it's a proposal. You don't do the quantitative study, because in order to do that, and we'll talk more about this towards the end of February, you'd need at least 1,000 respondents to get any good probabilistic sample. If you were going to sample the city of San Antonio, you'd do 1,000. If you were going to do the west side of San Antonio, you do 1,000. 1,000 is usually we'll talk more about the principles of sampling later in the semester, but you would need something like 1,000 people. So really this semester, 6316 rather, is a quantitative mixed methods proposal. And so take a look at some detail at the exploratory design that they speak about in Creswell, and then you can decide whether you want to follow my suggestion or not. I'm not obligating you to it. Whichever way you go, my suggestion or any of the others, you've got to provide a detailed rationale of why you're using that particular design. So keep that in mind. I think I've got everything I think up on Blackboard in terms of milestones, in terms of what's due and when it's due. If this works right, and I have any reason to believe that it won't, that as you hit those milestones, you're actually writing your paper. Here's the syllabus. Practice assignment 1 is field testing your proposal interview guide if you haven't already done it. Field testing again, tweaking it, posting the interview guide, and the findings from the interviews by latter part of this next week, or this week, I guess, and in a way that we can all see those. And please let me know, send me an email if the posting's not working. It's new Blackboard and it's new for me, like it might be new for you. And I think I've got it set up, but you never know. All right, so and then coming up in February, this goes until after spring break, through spring break, you'll be doing assignment 2, which is your background and introduction. If you think about it, quite a lot of that is what you did in your qualitative proposal. That is the reason why you got into this particular study. You already laid that out in the qualitative proposal. This is just a quantitative manifestation of your original idea. So a lot of the background and introduction is probably there. You'll just need to tweak it to incorporate comments having to do with mixed method model and your particular design that you want to choose for this. And then we do research questions, hypotheses, and statements of significance for assignment 3, mid to late February. Now, research question you probably had. Why is this thing happening? And so I want to do a qualitative study of it. But we probably didn't have any hypotheses at that time, maybe just tentative ones, because in qualitative study you don't want to do hypotheses because that gives you a framework. And then you're going in to talk to people and you're looking for them to answer the questions you have in your framework. I believe this is why it varies, and so you go listening to justify why you think it varies. And you might have a research question about why does it vary, and then you listen to people in the qualitative study to understand why it varies. And then from that, you begin to frame your hypotheses in a more quantitative way. The y equals x. Y is the why does it vary, and the x is what you think is the hypothesis that's going to predict that. And we'll talk more about that later in the month. And then your statements of significance. I think you already had 1 or 2 statements of significance in your qualitative, so you can just bring those forward and tweak them. So to some extent, the development of this proposal for this spring, significant pieces of it have been done in the fall. You bring them forward, tweak them, make them, update them, and that sort of thing. And then by March 8th, March 28th, the latter part of March, we'll be doing data and sampling, and then we'll get more into the equation side of it, how you're going to collect the data for this, what would your sampling design look like, how would you reach out to your respondents, are you going to use SurveyMonkey, or are you going to do send it out in an email? We'll talk all about that stuff after spring break. That's assignment 4. And then by the time we get to the end of March, it's basically writing the proposal, and by then you will have written the 4 or 5 chief segments, so it'll really just be kind of tidying it up and putting some conclusions, and you'll have it finished. More or less is how we're talking about this. So I think that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I think I've got, these are the notes that I have posted, the 3 notes so far. I think if you pay attention to the notes, I think you'll be okay. I'm going to, I'm not sure this week. I can't today. I got training of all things, one in a little while and one later in the day, and I got a Geographic Information Systems class. It's like today's like jammed with training. Pretty peculiar. And tomorrow, probably Friday, I'll post a thread. Monday for sure. I'll post another discussion thread that has to do with this segment coming up this month of February. So, it's a directed study. It's 4 of us. Get into the discussion. One of you has gotten into discussion. Everybody get into the discussion. The more we get into the discussion, the more our own ideas will evolve, and the better the group of us, the 4, will move through time. Sort of colleagues, shall we say. Sharing one another's ideas and motivating one another and providing critiques and all of that sort of thing. So anyway, I'm glad to be here and looking forward to talking with the 3 of you more, and I'll see you in discussion. Take care.